So, hi everyone. I'm going to talk about 10 years of SEO for everyone. And well, I wanted to set the stage a bit, because do you remember 2010? 2010 was slightly different from where we are now. I mean, this guy was still president in the United States, and I dare say I preferred that. Europe was in a deep debt crisis. We started by bailing out Greece, then banks, then everything broke. Merkel was the chancellor in Germany, and Cameron and Clegg were running the UK. This was all, well, quite different from today. Yoast HQ looked like this. My desk is not usually that clean. Although we do have a clean desk policy here in the office, but and our family was, well, smaller. I'll show you a better picture later on of what we are now, but I can tell you that my hair has not looked that black in quite a while. So that was us, that was the world. But what was Google up to? Well, Google 10 years ago looked like this, at least their logo did. They've gone through a few iterations in the last few years, which is funny to look at because this doesn't look all that different. The only difference is that the colors are slightly more, well, Lego-ish, which I like. And then they went flat, which was all the rage back then, and well, nobody's really understood why. And finally understood that a slightly better font would probably better suit them. But that's not what you want to hear or what I want to talk about all the time. Google did a lot of algo updates and changes, and a lot of things over the years have changed, but at the same time, not all that much. Let me walk you through it. You might remember Panda. Panda was an update that was targeting low quality pages. It was an algorithm that they reran every couple of months in the beginning. So they would rerun it like 3, 4, or 5 times a year until eventually they incorporated Panda in the algorithm. So this was, I think, 2010 or 2011. And after that, they ran another black and white animal, Penguin, which targeted unnatural links and tried to penalize websites that were buying links or were doing what they would call unnatural stuff. In reality, what they were targeting was everyone who was optimizing for Google instead of optimizing for attendees. Then came an update that was called Hummingbird, and I think the importance of this update is still not understood by everyone. In the past, Google used to look at the words that you were searching for, and it would just literally do a mathematical search for pages that had those words in them. Now it tried to understand the meaning of what you were searching for and what the best result for that would be. So instead of having a number of results somewhere with, hey, this page has that keyword that many times and that keyword that many times, it came up with a better system, and with a system that really understood better what your query was about. So the biggest update in Hummingbird wasn't even in how it ranked pages, it was in how it understood your queries as a user. In all of these cases, if your website was good for users, it would rank better. Over the last decade, the most important thing that has changed is that Black Hat SEO, which was a thriving community 10 years ago, has slowly dwindled and has gone away and has, well, become almost impossible to do well for most people. Of course, you can still do Black Hat SEO if you spend a lot of time, and you can still do things that you only do for Google and that you optimize it to spam Google, but it's become way too much work for most people to think this is a viable way of getting traffic to your site. Which, in all honesty, when I was writing it down, might make you wonder, why are all these people working at Yoast? What are you all doing? Because that advice you've been giving us for a while, right? Build a good website. Well, I want to give you some examples. For instance, in 2011, Google introduced support for rel author. That was a way of highlighting authors in the search results. You might remember this. It was awesome. I've played with this so much. The bright blue background behind my head there is not a coincidence. I tested that. I had a couple of other variations. This one got the most clicks. Doing this turned out to be quite hard for people. So we added simple ways of doing this to Yoast SEO. Then, of course, a lot of people started doing it well. Suddenly, every search result had like 10 faces next to the search results. And, well, it wasn't really working anymore. So Google killed it. Now, the funny thing is that they didn't do a blog post about killing it. They did a Google Plus post about killing it. And I had to go to the web archive to find this Google Plus post because, well, they've also killed Google Plus. So a lot of their communication from the last few years is lost because it happened on Google Plus and Google just removed it. There's no archive of it on anywhere on Google's own domains. You have to go through the web archive to fix this. But rel author was an interesting experiment. What they were trying to do is to try and connect real people on other profiles to authors. They're still trying to do that with Schema today. So they don't need rel author anymore the way that they had it before, and they don't need to give the benefit anymore that they were giving by giving you that face in the search results. But they are still very much interested in tying authors to content. Another example is that in 2011 as well, Google introduced support for rel next, rel prev. Now, WordPress core had rel next, rel prev baked in because it was in the HTML spec. But WordPress core had something completely different from what Google intended with rel next, rel prev. So we fixed this in Yoast SEO. And we made rel next, rel prev work properly. So if you're on a paginated archive, if you're on page 1, there will be a rel next pointing you to page 2. And if you're on page 2, there will be a rel next pointing you to page 3 and a rel prev pointing you to page 1. It's a very simple way of indicating that you're in a paginated series. Unfortunately, Google killed it. Turns out that people were getting this wrong all the time, and getting it wrong led to more problems than just Google following the pagination that you already have to have on your site anyway for normal users to be able to go through your archives. So they killed it. We've kept it around because some search engines still say that they find it useful. And we've already built the code and it's not that heavy for us to run, so it's still there. But yeah, well, we did it for naught, basically. Then there's XML sitemaps. One of the biggest things of Google and other search engines from a decade ago, even slightly longer ago, in fact, where they introduced this standard. And this standard looks very hard, right? It wants a URL, it wants a last modified date and even hour in some cases, a change frequency and a priority. Now the problem is, and this is where I think we shine, but also don't often tell this well enough, we knew that Google was not using change frequency and priority. We tested this. I've worked on some of the largest sites in the world and played with these variables. And as we played with this, we figured out they weren't using that. And they admitted to that in private conversation. But it took them literally until 3 weeks ago to update the documentation on google.com and say, hey, we ignore priority and change frequency. But we knew that it didn't work. So we didn't give you any settings for it, which led to all sorts of discussions and people wanting to use other XML sitemaps plugins because they couldn't set those priorities and change frequencies, which we knew didn't matter. What we try to do and have always been trying to do is to only give you controls for stuff that you actually should be able to change and that you should be thinking about. If we don't give you an interface for something, it doesn't mean that we don't do it. It means that we think we can do it automatically and we can do it automatically correctly for everyone. Now, this might be a bit of hubris, but we do talk about this a lot with Google and the other search engines, and most of the time we just get it right. So we've been adding and removing stuff. That's our job. Well, yes, but we've been doing more. We also do content analysis. In Yoast SEO 1.0, we had the content analysis, and the content analysis ran as you saved your page. It would, the editor would reload and it would rerun the content analysis on the page. In Yoast SEO 3.0, we introduced real-time content analysis. This was back in 2015, November of 2015, now 5 years ago. On top of this, we have been able to build a lot of other cool things. So next to continuously improving our content analysis, which gives you feedback on, hey, you're not using this keyword enough. And as of recently, we're saying, hey, if you use this keyword 10 times in the first paragraph and then not throughout your text, we're not going to say that it's okay. We're going to tell you, hey, this doesn't really work like this. You should really make sure that you stay on topic throughout your text. In 2016, we added the readability analysis to that. We added an analysis that told you whether you were writing content that was easy to understand for users. Marika will talk more later about why this is important for SEO. And I think it's really, really important for SEO and still not understood well by everybody why readability matters so much. Of course, we've also got our schema functionality, and schema was actually introduced in 2011, and Jono will talk more later about how that worked and what has all happened since then. But we've worked on that and we've added a lot of cool things. I'm still very proud of the work we did with Google to implement the FAQ schema and the how-to blocks in Yoast SEO. This particular example that I'm showing you now from my own personal blog is one of the best examples I know of. Hey, you can get really nice screenshots, and this looks incredible on mobile. You can do really cool stuff with these how-to blocks, and I don't think a whole lot of people are using them yet. And the people that are using them are getting great results with them. So with our content analysis, our readability analysis, and these blocks, we help you write better content and we help you structure it. And then we can take care of all the schema underneath. Now, this has been our advice for the entire last decade. Build a good website for your users and it will rank better. Of course, this is also what Google has been saying. I had this presentation done, and then yesterday they did this blog post, evaluating page experience for a better web. Now, one thing I can say is that it would be very nice if the Google Webmaster team started using our readability analysis when they write their blog posts, because their sentences tend to be long and hard. But this sentence does really bear understanding. Because we continue to work on identifying and measuring aspects of page experience, we plan to incorporate more page experience signals on a yearly basis to both further align with evolving user expectations and increase the aspects of user experience that we can measure. Or, we think we understand how people use websites. We're trying to figure out how we can make measurements that actually calculate that properly so that we can do this automatically. Because they can't have everyone go through every website, they need measurements. So in this blog post, what they said was that they were using their new page speed measurements as part of the measurements that they use for user experience on a site. And that they would in fact thus become ranking factors or ranking signals, as they've now started calling them. So basically they were saying, if your website's slow, we are going to use that as input for our ranking, which is logical because they don't want to send people to websites that are poor results for their users. Now this ties in very well to something we did earlier this year, which is release Yoast SEO 14.0, our indexables release, which, like the 3.0 release we did in 2015, this lays the groundwork for loads and loads and loads of cool improvements to Yoast SEO that we can build over the next year and years. But it also made sites on average 5 to 10% faster. Now this still blows my mind that we, by optimizing how we load stuff, can make an entire site 5 to 10% faster. But it is really, well, it is what WordPress is. We are laying the framework for next steps and for doing this better. So this is 2020. And I was just here with Marika, my wife, who is now our CEO. She actually became CEO in 2019, but well, I didn't have that slide. Our family is slightly bigger. We've got 4 kids, and our eldest now is almost as tall as Marika is, and will soon catch up with me. This guy works for Netflix, which in some way is not logical and very logical at the same time. Cameron didn't do all that much other than writing a biography, but Nick Clegg actually works for Facebook now and is probably solving bigger political problems than he could have in the UK. And Merkel is still in Germany. The question remains as to whether she will join Google after her work there, but we'll see about that. We no longer have a debt crisis, but we now have a Corona crisis, which is why Yoast HQ has looked like this in all of 2020. That's not entirely true, of course, because as you can see, I'm sitting in my office. We have a Yoast campus now, I'm very proud to say. We have 4 buildings in our hometown in Wiegen. We have like 95 people here or something like that now, and then 20 more across the world. And we'll actually have a 5th building later this year if all of this goes well. So Yoast is doing well. But what's really important is the gist of what I've just told you. A lot of things might change over time. But in order to rank well, any search engine worth anything to users will only rank you well if you are the best result. This advice has not changed from 10 years ago to today. You have to be the best result, not in Google's eyes, but if you ask 100 people, 90 of them have to say that's the best result. Our content analysis will help you write better, will help you write better optimized, better readable, and better understandable text. And we will continue to take care of your technical SEO. That's our promise to you, that if there's technical SEO stuff on your site that needs fixing, Yoast SEO should be able to do that for you. And with now over 100 people worldwide, I dare say that we are ready to fix whatever Googles or others throw at us. And with that, I think we've got some time for questions.
Thanks for your presentation, Joost.
My pleasure, Taco.
There is a Q&A button at the bottom of everyone's screen. So if you want to ask Joost a question, you can press the Q&A button and ask your questions there. And we can then answer them.
I'm trying hard to open the Q&A screen on my screen, but that's...
I will read them out loud as they come in.
Good.
So you've been looking back at 10 years, Yoast, Google, and the world. The logical question then is, what's going to happen in the next 10?
God, if only I knew. Well, in many ways, and you should really stick around for the next presentations, because I think a lot of that will follow when you see Jono's presentation on Schema, for instance. I think Schema, if that fulfills its promise, it'll be a lot easier for other search engines to rise and for more cool stuff to be built on the web. And what I hope is that we'll be able to make the web a nicer place again, that we'll be able to come up with trusted signals and with ways of making everything work together in such a way that we get a better web again, that we get a web that's more like the beginning of the web and a bit less with fake news and all the other trouble that we've run into. So that's my hope. Whether that'll actually happen, we'll see.
We'll know in 10 years when we look back at the first 20 years of Yoast. So meanwhile, we have a few questions coming in. First one being from Jeroen Rotti. He asks, Yoast, can you shine a light on the upcoming schema blocks in Yoast SEO?
Well, I can, but I want too much. To be honest, we've redone our schema blocks implementation a couple of times now because Gutenberg keeps changing, or the block editor, or whatever you try to call it. And we're still figuring out what the best way to do that is and make these things actually as usable as possible and as user-friendly as possible. Because the only way of getting people to really use these is by making them really simple. So that it is really simple to make them. So I'm hoping that we'll be able to do a couple of cool new ones like a jobs block very soon. Well, bear with us as we implement that and figure out as well how to do this in a way that scales and that works for everybody. Turns out that when you do this on 11 million sites, it's kind of hard.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I can see from the questions coming in that there's a lot of people interested in new blocks. Related to that is a compatibility question, actually. Will blocks be compatible with Elementor, the page builder?
We do have some plans for that. Elementor are good friends, so we've talked to them about that, and we have ideas on how we can do that. It becomes problematic, though, I'll be honest. We have a portion of our users on the classic editor. We have a portion of our users on the block editor. We have a portion of our users using Elementor. We have a portion of our users using Divi. So basically, we're building 4 SEO plugins. And that is slightly hard. So we're trying to see how we can do that and maintain as much of the code across all of them so that we don't have to, well, basically do all the work 4 times. This takes some time, but I'm fairly certain that we'll get that done somewhere this year.
That sounds very good, I think. So there's a question related to WordPress from an anonymous attendee asking, in 10 years from now, where do you think the market share of WordPress will be? Given that it's currently at 35%, do you think it will attain the top spot or grow even more?
I think it's at 36 point something even. It's growing fast. I think we'll get to 50. within 3 to 4 years. Honestly, and I sometimes hope that we would just get rid of all the other ones and just focus on one open source CMS with the entire open source community, but that might not be the best solution. The other open source CMSs are losing market share, and as a whole, we probably should be working together better and figuring out how we can strengthen each other and make sure that we get open source CMSs underneath every website.
Well, I think related to that is the next question by Sebastian van der Lans. He asks, Gutenberg is ported to Drupal and Laravel. Will Yoast be brought to Drupal? And for example, on the closed source Shopify in the coming years?
I can't really comment on that, honestly, because I don't know. We're open to that. We've usually been a bit more hesitant on working on closed source environments. It depends a bit. We have a set of core values that we've actually recently put on our site as well. And the most important there is, does this make the web better? And if we do something that, well, we really need to think about it. Would this make the web better? Not our wallets, because I don't care about that, but would this make the web as a whole a better thing in the long run? And I think in a lot of cases, the answer to that will be yes, but then the point becomes, okay, what's the most efficient way of making a better web? Is it in spending more time on WordPress, which is 36-point-something% of the web, or is it spending 10% of our time on a CMS like Drupal, which is only like 2% left and is declining? So that becomes a hard question to answer. And even harder when you're looking at something like Shopify, which is growing really fast and thus might be valuable to invest your time in.
All right. There's more looking into the future questions. So I have 2 more of those for you. The first one is by Stanley. First, congratulations to Yoast. I've been there since the beginning, and my question is about Yoast's general strategy for dealing with languages other than English. I work primarily in French and assume that Google has specific tweaks for this and other languages. How does Yoast approach this?
Well, not just Google has specific tweaks for that. We do too. So in Yoast SEO Premium, we have a feature called Morphology, where we recognize word forms. So if you write something in singular, and we recognize the plural, and we recognize different tenses of verbs, etc. So we do this we have to do this per language, because you can't do this for all languages at once, because they're not logical like that. So we are adding more and more languages support all the time. We have a team of linguists here at Yoast that, well, that's their job. That's what they do. And they're awesome at it. So we're growing that fast. We've recently added French and Russian, and more's coming. And well, we're actually going to ask for your feedback in some of those too. And then if you provide us with feedback on what we're not doing well, then we can fix it. And this is hard for Google. It's hard for us. And yes, they are definitely doing language specific stuff as well. Although a lot of that for them is machine learned. So they do it per language, but they don't even know that they do it per language. They just do it automatically, and it works differently in one language than the others because their machine learning learns it automatically.
All right. So the next question is, you've mentioned that indexables is the foundation for new awesome features. Is there anything you can reveal yet?
Well, one of the things we'll be doing is our internal linking suggestions in Yoast SEO Premium will soon be revamped and improved on top of that. And then we'll use the combination of all of that to build faster XML sitemaps, to build better systems to help you manage links within your site. We can do a lot of that. We have loads of ideas. I don't want to talk about too many of them to not give them away before we've actually launched them, because we do have some competition to think about sometimes.
Yeah. So stay tuned is the answer.
Yes.
Right. I think we have time for a final question, and that is looking back at the past 10 years, a question by Laura Sacco. What is the most difficult challenge you faced in the last 10 years?
So many of them. There's been a lot of different challenges. Growing a company to this size leads to all sorts of challenges, from hiring to financial to well, technical problems and launches that don't go well, and releases that well, still have me going like, oh, we shouldn't have done that differently, and maybe we could have done this better. There's a lot of these challenges. In all, I think the biggest challenge to us is to keep on learning and to keep on improving, not just myself, but to everyone in this company, to keep on improving, and for everyone to understand better what we're doing and how we can move it all forward, and to get that energy that we felt when we started this, to keep that momentum and to energize everyone else in the company. It's that's probably the biggest challenge.
Well, I must say, looking at the team there is now, you've done an awesome job, even though it is challenging.
Thank you.